Welcome back to another engaging episode of Profit from Legal. I'm your host, Noel Bagwell. We have another great interview episode for you today, and my guest is Trudy Rankin from the other side of the world, from Australia. It's going to be a really cool interview. Stick around, and we'll be right back after this brief commercial message. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Profit from Legal. Today, we've got another winning interview episode for you. And my guest today is Trudy Rankin. She's the founder of West Island Digital and the Online Business Liftoff program. She's a digital tech specialist, entrepreneur, and mentor. Trudy has over 15 years experience in large organizations, first as a certified project manager and later as a senior manager and CIO, or Chief Information Officer. Trudy is now leveraging that experience to help people use their personality, passions, strengths, and life experience to build a sustainable online business. She's the host of the Online Business Launchpad podcast, and she and her team also have a YouTube channel that helps non-techie people build their digital skills so they can achieve their online business goals. Welcome to the Profit from Legal podcast, Trudy.
Thanks for having me, Noel. It's great to be here.
Well, let's dive right in. Why is prioritizing excellent strategic decision-making essential for small to medium business or SMB owners and decision makers?
I'm going to take a little bit of a contrarian view here, Noel, because I'm going to say it's not.
I love it. Tell me why.
Well, the thing is that, and I'm just going to take you back in time to when I was first starting out in my business. And as you said, you know, I've got lots and lots of experience working in corporate and at a senior level as well. And one of the things that I discovered very quickly when I started my own business was that I had so many skills and life experience and strengths and things that I could help a truckload of different people. But I very quickly learned that when I was trying to serve everybody, I couldn't serve anybody because I was confusing them and I was confusing them myself with marketing messages, with what I could offer in terms of services, et cetera, et cetera. And so I ended up adopting what I would call more of a, I'm just going to use this phrase and I'll explain why in a minute. It's more of a suck it and see approach rather than a strategic approach, which is typically, you're going to look out over the horizon and you go, that's where I want to go. Got these great big audacious goals that we want to meet and we're going to do this amazing stuff in the world. I actually decided where I needed to start was I'm going to take a lean startup approach. And I'm sure you've probably heard of the lean startup approach. But basically, you adopt a method for setting up little experiments where you try something and you see what worked. If it didn't work, you try something else. If it did work, you go, what's the next little experiment that's going to take me on that journey that I want to go on? And so for me, the start of my journey was having to figure out who I was going to serve and then how I was going to serve them. And to be honest, it sort of fit with how my career had developed even before I became an entrepreneur, because, and this happens to a lot of people, but I think it happens a lot more to women potentially than it does to guys. It's a generalization, so I take that with a grain of salt, but a lot of women tend to fall into career paths by accident. They tend to look at what's happening around them and pick what they can. And then that takes them a ways. And so rather than having a goal, I'm going to be this and working towards it, they tend to take this zigzag path where over time they end up developing the skills that they need to then, when they're ready, go straight for that goal. So that's why I just think that for a lot of people that trying to develop that long-term strategy and that big plan, it doesn't work, especially when you're first starting out and you don't know enough about who you want to serve and how you want to serve them to be able to develop something. It ends up being like the old phone book that you use for a doorstop. It just doesn't work.
What I'm hearing you say is that often entrepreneurship can be reactive instead of proactive. Is that a concise way to say that?
Absolutely. It can be reactive instead of proactive. However, I'd like to say that the more quickly that you can flip that so that you're proactively looking for ways to react, if that makes sense, in a controlled way, the quicker you're going to get to your goals of understanding who you're serving and who you're helping.
The proactive side of it might be intentionally responsive rather than just reactionary then.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I love that. I've found that having the old business plan is not such a bad thing. It just needs to be something that you don't consider one and done. Instead, it's a living document that helps you keep track of where you're going, where you've been, what you're doing, how you're doing it, where you're going, and what you see on the horizon. But instead of maybe being a 3-year outlook, maybe something like 6 months would be good for really small businesses. And after all, one of their great strengths is that they're nimble, that they can pivot quickly and that sort of thing. Would you say that's consistent with your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And coming back to my corporate experience, I'm so familiar with plans that are, they're as tall as your arm and you come up to your exactly, they're very complex and big and nobody reads them. And once you get to, when I got to the point where I discovered the discipline, it's a discipline of getting it all down onto one page. Once you get it onto one page, then you can set your goals for either 3 months or 6 months or a year, and then you can work backwards from that. And so what we teach people in our online business liftoff community is to go for a year and then go quarter by quarter planning, break it down. And you have your high level year goals. And then you actually, quarter 4 is a little bit less high level, quarter 3 is a little bit less high level until you get down to quarter 1, which is much more detailed. And then you break it down by month and then by week and then by day, what it is that you're going to achieve. So we really strongly believe in planning, very strongly believe in planning, but you want to do it in a way that's believable because you can actually see that you could achieve that. And use SMART, the old acronym of SMART,
yeah.
SMART goals. You want them to be measurable and achievable and all of those things that go with that acronym. It's a good one. But you want to only have just enough so that you can cope with those. And then, yes, you're right. If you get 3 months into it or even 2 weeks into it and you go, and you've done enough work to see if it's going to work, you could go, that's not working. Let's try something else. And you can adjust your goals. And you should actually be doing that on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, you just end up throwing good money after bad, or good effort after bad, as it were.
So I just got to add this. It's more about it's the time that you lose. You're never going to get that back.
Absolutely. Yeah, time is the one thing they're not making any more of. Or no, wait, that's real estate. Well, when it comes to developing strategic decision-making skills in one's professional life, whether it's, the intentional responsiveness or more long-term strategic decision-making in one's professional life, what would you say is the biggest mistake that you see SMB owners and decision-makers making?
I think the biggest mistake that they make is that they don't actually take the time to sit down and think about things. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day busyness and the must-dos and the services to your customers and the team management and everything that goes with that. And even, you and I were talking earlier about some of the things that can explode, risks that can suddenly eventuate and become real. And now you've got to put out fires. You get so busy doing that you don't take the time to sit down and get back in touch with who you are as a person, what your definition of success is for yourself as a person and for your business. And once you've done those things and you redefine on a regular basis and review what it is that you believe will be a success, make you feel like success, then you can start planning, you can start taking that next evolution, I think, in terms of the sophistication of your business, which is moving you towards having a strategy, having something that's going to allow you to have a big, hairy, audacious goal that you're working towards, and then move more towards that strategic outlook that you should have as the business owner or the CEO of your business, is that you're actually there to lead your company. You're actually shouldn't be there, and it takes time to get to this. I understand that. But you shouldn't be the one who's doing everything in your business.
Oh, I could not agree more. There's no quicker way to burn out or get completely stressed out or fall out of love with what it is that you do than trying to do it all yourself. What I'm hearing you say is that being intentional is absolutely essential. It's the way to combat the sort of strategic decision-making mistakes that people make.
Mm. And I'd like to bring it back a little bit to what we were saying at the beginning, using that lean startup approach where you'd intentionally set yourself an experimental goal, you try it, and then you intentionally observe and intentionally look at the results, pull them apart and go, was that what I wanted? What did I learn from that? What should I do next? So in a way, it's its own strategy. If you want to sort of bring it all the way back through into a loop, it is its own strategy, but it's a different way of doing a strategy than you would normally think of when you talk about strategy.
More responsive than, we're going to chart this course and hew to that course come hell or high water. It's really more of a let's trailblaze a little bit. You have to kind of you just take a machete and hack your way through the jungle. You may not be able to see that far ahead of you, but you generally know that you're taking directionally correct steps. And if you hit a roadblock, you go around. You may not always be able to just charge right through. I like that responsive approach because sometimes, especially if you're really in new and uncharted territory, you don't know exactly what you're going to encounter. And if you don't know exactly what you're going to encounter and you can't forecast all of that, then you just have to be able to take directionally correct steps. For a lot of entrepreneurs, it's not so much that what they're doing is objectively not foreseeable. It's that they don't have the perspective to be able to do that forecasting themselves. And for me, I mean, that keeps me in new shoes because, I'm one of the people that they bring in to get the bird's eye view, to get a little more perspective. But having someone like you is also really helpful for that. It allows them to do a little more strategic planning, a little more strategic decision-making type stuff because they have the benefit of your insight and your perspective. So too with lawyers, accountants, and other people, other professionals that do what they do, which is another really important reason not to do it all yourself. Bringing in these professionals lets you be more intentional, proactive, and less fly by the seat of your pants, ad hoc, reactive, all of those kinds of things. Well, you really answered my next question, which is what's the better alternative? You just brought it right back full circle to what you were saying before. That's a great alternative.
So I just want to add one thing to it though, or maybe a couple of things. And that is that in order to be able to take that kind of an approach, you have to be able to give yourself permission to do what I would call making mistakes. And once again, I don't know what it's like so much sort of where you're from, but when I was growing up and also here in Australia, people tend to really rip apart failure or what they perceive to be failure, and people aren't allowed to fail. And you can't fail unless you make mistakes, but you can't succeed unless you make mistakes. And so one of the things that we try to help people understand is that you want to make mistakes. Try fast, fail fast, but it's not failure unless you give up. And so we have this saying, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And, the 8th time or the 9th time or the 10th time, you're going to seek success. But you may have people in your life who are looking at what you're doing and then going, but you just screwed that up. You just made a mistake. How are you ever going to succeed because you just blew that? But you've got to have a learning mindset where you're prepared to say, okay, I'm going to try something. It's okay if it doesn't work the way I thought it was going to work. What can I learn from it? How am I going to do that differently? So it comes down to just changing your mindset around what's failure, what's a mistake.
Absolutely. Everything is an experiment. And really, you're testing hypotheses. You're using the scientific method, really. If you think about it, you're just being logical, rational, and scientific about the way that you approach business. Some experiments prove your hypothesis was correct. Some experiments prove that your hypothesis was incorrect. Some experiments lead to absolutely new and unexpected discoveries. The game is not over till you say it's over. Yep. When you walk off the field, when you quit, that's game over. Until then, you're still trying, you're still testing, you're still hypothesizing, you're adjusting your hypothesis, you're experimenting to see if you can make a new discovery. What someone else perceives as failure for you might just be part of the process. And if they say, oh, you failed, they just lack the perspective to see the entire series of experiments. Really, it's not over until you say it is. And that's one of the brilliant things about being an entrepreneur from my perspective. It's one of the things that I learned from working in so many different businesses and having all the jobs that I've had is that you really get to set the terms of the game. Nobody else does. And, you can call it failure if you need to, but I love what you said. If you fall down 8 times, get up 9 times. If you fall down 7 times, get up 8 times, however many times it takes, but always get back on the horse. Yep. Well, can you, I don't want you to breach confidentiality. I know, like, as a lawyer, I'm pretty sensitive to, attorney-client privilege and that sort of thing. And I know you don't necessarily have attorney-client privilege with your clients, but people do generally expect a degree of confidentiality. I don't want you to violate anyone's trust, but I love to tell stories, and I love to hear other people's stories. And I would love to hear a story from you that really illustrates the power of what you do and like a success story that you've had with a client. Is there one that you love to share?
Oh, there's so many I would love to share. We could be here all day talking about client success stories. I love them. They're really great. But I will tell you about Shahan. Okay. Shahan was, and this is basically how the Online Liftoff program got started. Shahan was in his early 20s, and he was super, super, super frustrated because he has a sight impairment, and he has to be able to have things really up close to his face before he can see them clearly enough to be able to use them or know what they are. And he had been trying to get a job from the time he was in high school. High school, no job. University, no luck. He actually did a master's degree, no luck. And he was just really frustrated and bored. And one day he finally decided he's going to deal with the boredom. He started writing a blog because he loved writing. He enjoyed it. It was something he was good at. And he used the time with the blog, honing the craft of writing and digging into his interest areas. And I had been doing some work with Vision Australia as a consultant when I was in that process of trying to figure out who I wanted to serve and who I wanted to help. And basically discovered that they had people who were interested in being interns. So I brought Shahan into my business as an intern through Vision Australia. And when I found out about his blog writing skills, I said, well, how many people are coming to your blog every month? And he said, around 1,000 people. And I went, whoa, that's pretty good for somebody whose blog hasn't been going that long. And I said, basically, well, how are you monetizing that? And he looked at me and he said, I didn't know you could monetize that. I didn't know you could make money from writing just a blog post. I'm just writing about stuff I'm interested in. So we spent the next few months figuring out how to help him, for him to figure out how to monetize his blog. And he has now got to the place where people ask him to write stuff for their online magazines. He loves history. His whole thing that he really loves is history, writing about history and antiques, both together. And he has a business where he'll go out to flea markets, he'll buy antiques because he's good at spotting bargains, and he'll bring them home, he'll do them up, take videos of him doing them up, restoring them, puts those on YouTube, and then he sells those antiques online. And that's his business. And he's moved from, the first time he made $10 from monetizing his blog was one of the most exciting days of his life and my life as well, because it was just like, yes, it's proof that it works. But he makes so much more than that now because he has this much, much wider things that he does that he loves doing. He enjoys doing it. And if you ever want to check out his blog, it's called Throughout History. And he just has an interesting style. He talks about stuff. He still talks about stuff that he's interested in, but it's fun to read. And if you're into history and antiques, it's really quite cool. So that would be... I'm
definitely going to check it out. Yeah. Throughout History is what it's called. Throughout History.
Yeah, Throughout History.
Really cool.
Yeah. And
that's great. I thank you for sharing that story. That's just a really great story. And you helped him just go monetize his blog. That was your component of it, right? But such an impactful thing because now he's self-made man, right? He can earn his own living doing what he loves. I mean, that's what it's all about, pursuing your passion, being your own boss, doing what you love, and being able to make a living doing it. It puts me in mind of Alan Watts, this great talk where he asks the question, what do you desire? We actually put that on our blog at executivelp.com. People can go to executivelp.com and search for that Alan Watts talk, what do you desire, where he talks about how not making money the main thing is so crucial, to follow what it is that you desire, to follow your passion and let that inform your professional life, your career decisions, and what it is that you choose to do. And he says, whatever you're interested in, you can find other people who are interested in those things. And if you love horseback riding, you can teach in a riding school or something like that, but to follow your passion first. Well, if a person is flying by the seat of their pants, they don't really have any perspective, everything seems to be ad hoc, and they're just constantly confused, and things aren't really working out for them, what would you recommend that they do? Like one or two quick things that you would recommend that they would do in order to change in directionally correct ways and start getting a handle on better strategic decision making or intentionally responsive decision making?
I think this is one of the things that we also teach in our community, and I just think it's so critical. And it took me a long time to learn this, but you can't get past it in terms of the best thing that you could possibly do to help you get to that intentionality. And that is that if you even have a half a glimmer of who it is that you would like to help and the problem that you would like to help solve, is that you need to go and talk to those people. Go and talk to them. Don't try to sell them anything. Don't try to, you're just not there as a salesperson. You're there as a listener. And you want to listen to them talk about their pain points and understand two things. One, what are their pain points actually, and not what you thought they were? What are they actually? And the second thing is that what is the language that they use to describe their pain and what they're looking for, what they would like, what they think might help resolve their pain. Now, the more important of those two things is the emotion words that they use to describe their pain points. Because you can take those emotion words and you can use them to start to craft the messages and the language around what it is that you want to do. But you can also use those discussions to really hone in on what it is that how you want to help those people. And once you have the clarity around who it is you want to help, how you want to help them, then you can start moving forward into the whole bigger wild world of, well, how do you get your message out there and those sorts of things. And then you can get into the experimentation side of things. Well, did that work? Did that not work? But you can't even really get into the experimentation side of things until you deeply understand the person that you want to help.
That's so powerful. It really is absolutely crucial that you know who your ideal client is, what is causing them pain, and how to hear their description of their pain in their own words, because ultimately that's what they're going to be putting into Google, right? Like that's what they're going to be searching. If you want to be at the top of the Google rankings, you need to be what people are searching for. And that's, typically how a lot of businesses grow in the 21st century. This has been such an insightful and useful interview. I really appreciate you coming on. But before you go, can you just take a minute and a half and tell people how they can connect with you and how they can get the most out of that first interaction with you?
Yeah, for sure. So the first way to find out more about what we do and who we are is to just go to onlinebusinessliftoff.com. That's all one great long word and no dashes or anything, onlinebusinessliftoff.com. And you can just sort of check out what we do and who we help. Or if you want to just get in touch with me personally, you can go and look me up on LinkedIn and pop in a connection request and make sure you say that you heard us on this particular podcast with Noel and myself. And I'd be delighted to get into a conversation with you on LinkedIn. But yeah, looking forward to connecting with people, and just know that it doesn't kind of matter where you are in your journey. There's going to be somebody who's going to be able to help guide you on those next steps. You just have to keep looking for that person who can help you.
Well, thank you so much for, again, coming on to the Profit from Legal podcast, being a part of what we're doing here and giving your pearls of wisdom to our audience. We'll make sure that we put links to all those things in the description. So if you're listening to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure you check out the episode description for a link to the Online Business Liftoff podcast and community, the website. Connect with Trudy on LinkedIn. She's just a wonderful human being, and I'm sure you're going to get a lot out of that interaction. Well, that's all for this episode of Profit from Legal. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Share it with your friends, and we'll talk to you in the next episode of Profit from Legal. Thanks again. Have a great day.